Hello everyone. A little while ago, I platinumed the recently released Astro Bot for PS5, and I absolutely loved the game from beginning to end. It'd be an understatement to say that Astro Bot was a huge success. The game did incredibly well on Metacritic, even garnering a higher score than Final Fantasy VII Rebirth. As someone who absolutely loves Final Fantasy VII Rebirth and FF7 as a whole, let me tell you, that's quite an impressive feat. While Astro Bot is not my personal game of the year, that would go to Final Fantasy VII Rebirth, I do think that it is the most important game of 2024, and there are several reasons why I think this. Before we get into the video, I just want to thank all of you guys for the incredible support on my last video. I was not expecting it to blow up the way that it did, and it means so much to me that people saw my video and checked it out. I know it's stereotypical for a YouTuber to say stuff like this, but I really mean it. The other thing I'd like to say, which is also a stereotypical YouTuber thing, so I apologize, is did you know that almost all of my viewers have not subscribed to my channel? But for real though, guys, subscribing is just one button click away. It's completely free as it is with all channels on YouTube, and you'll be able to see when I upload a new video. Subscribing really does help out the channel, and it will allow me to keep putting out more content like this. I'd really appreciate it if you could hit that subscribe button, and the next big goal for the channel is 1,000 subs. I know we can hit it. Thanks, guys. But with that out of the way, let's jump into why Astro Bot is the most important game of 2024. Let me take you back to what I'd argue is the golden age of video games, the PS1 and PS2 era of gaming. Now, I wasn't around for the PS1 era of gaming, but man, I wish I was. I was born in 2002, and I started playing video games when I was about 3 years old, right towards the end of the PS2's life cycle. The first games that I remember playing were the original two LEGO Star Wars games with my mom on the PS2. Those games were simple, effective, and extremely charming. This was the common theme with games back then. I mean, I was just a tiny little kid, so practically everything good I experienced felt new and exciting in some way, but I think even at that young age, I could tell that there was something special about video games. And basically, every single game I played, not you, reinforced this feeling. Yeah, I was young and impressionable, and I'm super nostalgic for this time period in my life, but when I think of the games that I was playing at this time, they were actually good games that I would still enjoy playing today. Mostly. Ratchet & Clank, The Force Unleashed, Revenge of the Sith video game, Battlefront 1 and 2, Oni, etc. With all of these games, you can tell by playing them that they are labors of love by the developers. Developers who wanted to create something cool, interesting, and fun. Even in Oni's case, despite it having some issues, there's a reason why it's a cult classic. I bring this up because I've seen how games have evolved and changed over the last 19 years, and I know that many of you have had similar experiences. I've liked a lot of the growth that games have had over the years, but I have also absolutely despised some of the ways that games have changed, and I find myself longing for the good old days, when video games were simple, you could say. Incredible video by Bisley Channel. Check that video out, guys. But Astro Bot is absolutely one of those games that did this for me. Astro Bot is pure creativity and fun. It is simple, effective, and extremely charming, just like those games from my childhood. Playing this game made me feel like a kid again. You can really feel every ounce of passion that the developers at Team Asobi put into this game. With a lot of the games that come out today, I feel bad for the young kids that have some of these games as the first video game that they ever get to play. Can you imagine what it would be like to play a game like Anthem or Concord as your first video game ever? I don't even want to think about what that would be like. If I had a child, I would absolutely play Astro Bot with them, and I'd feel so good about having it as one of, if not their first games ever. That's great and all. I love Astro Bot, and clearly so do most people, as we have already gone over. But why is this game so important? Why do I think that it is the most important game of 2024? Well, to answer that question, I'd first like to pose one to you, the viewer. Have you ever heard of a little thing called live service video games?
No. Wait.
Live service video games are without a doubt one of the absolute worst trends in
Modern gaming
that I have ever seen in my entire life. While there are some genuinely good live service games that actually made it work and are fun to play, those are dime a dozen. An unfortunate byproduct of these few live service games that actually made it work, did things right, and saw incredible success like Fortnite, however, is that every single publisher looked at that success and said, hey, let's do that too. We're gonna make $1 million in 2 days. Nothing can possibly go wrong. This is not the first time where people in the industry are chasing trends, and it certainly won't be the last. Why do you think that there were so many games trying to be the next Doom back in the 90s? The difference is that with something like Doom clones, they were trying to iterate on the gameplay that was present in Doom and put their own spin on it, and there were some genuinely good games that came out of that. Now, with all of these big publishers trying to get a studio to make the next Fortnite for them, they just force the developers to put all of the live service crap that we hate in their games, even if it doesn't fit within the vision that the developers have. I swear, dude, the majority of live service games feel like the bastardization of this medium of entertainment that we love so much. In my last video, we talked about a little game that you might have heard of but never played called Concord. We talked about the character design present in that game, and my whole goal with that video was to take the lemons of Concord's character design and turn it into lemonade by learning something from it and sharing what I learned and observed with you. But what if I told you that there's another pitcher of lemonade that came from a different stack of lemons that made up the horrendous failure of Concord? You see, we have been trying for years to tell these big publishing companies that keep forcing their studios to make live service games, whether they like it or not, to stop doing this. I think the disaster piece that was Concord might have been the final nail in the coffin for live service games. But this wasn't the end of the story, because just days after Concord was shut down, something incredible happened. Astro Bot, a game that is pure creativity and passion, a game that harkens back to the golden age of video games, a game that is focused, a game that is single player, full priced, and has zero live service isms to be found anywhere in its DNA, comes out to monumental success. If Concord was the final nail in the live service coffin, Astro Bot was the hand that picked up the hammer and smashed that nail firmly into it. The colossal failure of Concord, followed immediately by the overwhelming success of Astro Bot, speaks volumes about what we want to see in our video games and what we don't want to see in them. Astro's Playroom was a short game that came with the PS5, and while this was not the first Astro game, it was the first one that I played, and I absolutely loved it. When I played it, I was really hoping that we'd get a longer and more expansive game starring Astro Bot, and Astro Bot absolutely delivered this for me. The game takes everything I loved about Astro's Playroom and cranks it up to 11. It's much longer, with more to do, and expands on the design and ideas that were present in Astro's Playroom. Astro's Playroom only had 4 levels, and all of those levels felt unique. Making 4 levels feel unique is much easier than making 80 feel unique. The crazy thing is that Astro Bot actually achieved this. Yeah, there are some reused mechanics and ideas across some of the levels, but every single level feels unique and brings something new to the table. I also was never unhappy to see a power-up or mechanic come back in a future level because I had so much fun with and loved all of them. The level design in Astro Bot is absolutely incredible, and the fact that Team Asobi managed to make every single level feel unique is a testament to this. While there were a couple of challenge levels that genuinely felt unfair and frustrating, the rest of the levels made me feel a sense of adventure and whimsy. I especially love the crazy and creative boss fights, as well as the levels where you get the abilities of a PlayStation character and get to play through a level that celebrates the game or series that they're from. You can tell right off the bat that when making Astro Bot, the focus of Team Asobi was to make a fun and charming game. The previously mentioned live service games often feel like a chore. Even if the game itself is good, the live service aspects of the game take away from the fun because you feel like you have to keep grinding to get the cool new items before you can no longer get them. This takes advantage of people's fear of missing out and feels like fun with a massive caveat. Astro Bot is fun with 0 caveats. If you want to do everything in the game, go for it. If you just want to beat the main story in the game, that's fine too. Either playstyle is acceptable and you won't miss out on anything because you can always come back and play the other parts of the game whenever you want. Now obviously there are still plenty of AAA games being released outside of Astro Bot that do incredibly well and do not have any live service slop in them. Again though, it is the timing of Astro Bot's release combined with how fun and charming of a game it is that makes it stand out and really hammers home how much we don't want live service games and how we just want fun, creative, visually appealing, and engaging games. People are saying that Astro Bot is the PlayStation mascot now, and I completely agree with this. It took them 30 years, but Sony finally found the Mario of their platform. Another reason why I think Astro Bot is the most important game of 2024 is because it is not a hyper-realistic cinematic masterpiece. While I think it's cool and makes sense that AAA studios want to push their technology and hardware to allow them to have higher fidelity graphics, I also think that we have reached a plateau in terms of how big the graphical advancements are. The PS5 Pro is the epitome of this. Now compare that to how much graphics advanced from Metal Gear Solid on PS1 to Metal Gear Solid 2 on PS2. Sony, in recent years especially, have been putting out games that are mainly super high fidelity cinematic masterpieces. Don't get me wrong, I love these games. The Uncharted series, The Last of Us, God of War 2018 Ragnarok, the Horizon games, the Insomniac Spider-Man games, Ghost of Tsushima. Those games are all incredible, and despite them all having high fidelity, realistic visuals, their art styles are all distinct. However, where are my extremely stylized games at? Where's a game like Parappa the Rapper? Sure, we had Ratchet & Clank Rift Apart, but that was like a super high budget Pixar movie. Still a nice shift from realism, but I want to see AAA games that are even more stylized. The astounding success of Astro Bot says to AAA studios, especially Sony, that there is still room for games with more stylized aesthetics. Not every single AAA game has to push graphics to the next level. We want the visuals of our games to have character, personality, and style that goes beyond pure realism. Visuals that feel fresh and unique, that are gorgeous to look at, and that think outside of the box. There's absolutely still room for games that have realistic graphics. Those games I listed before wouldn't have the same atmosphere if they were more stylized. However, lots of realistic games have this problem where their visuals kind of just blend together with other realistic looking games. The other problem with super high fidelity games is that they take extremely long to make and are ridiculously expensive. AAA studios need to have some more stylized games so that they can put out games at a faster rate, or at least keep people engaged with their studio while they develop their more expensive, higher end games. Most people also don't care about micro details in graphics when they are playing a game. They just want the game to be visually appealing, run well, and of course, play well. If the leaves on the trees are slightly less blurry while I'm swinging around New York City as Spider-Man on the PS5 Pro compared to the PS5, I do not care whatsoever. It makes no difference to me. This is why art direction is way more important than fidelity in games. Look at Nintendo games. Nintendo arguably has the best art direction in the entire industry, and all of their games are stylized. The only thing you ever hear people complaining about from a graphical standpoint with Nintendo games is the performance. Mostly. Something else that's cool about games with more stylized aesthetics is that they can push the gameplay, animations, and level design in the most over-the-top, crazy directions without making things feel uncanny. There are plenty of games that are in a realistic art style and have gameplay and set pieces that are bonkers and go totally off the rails, and it works totally fine. I think that it's an extremely fine line to walk, however, and that it is much easier to make over-the-top gameplay, animations, level design, and concepts work in games that have a more stylized art style. Imagine the gameplay, level design, and squash and stretch animations of a game like Mario Galaxy in a photorealistic art style. It would lose a lot of the charm and would feel weird and uncanny. Astro Bot is a perfect example of how you can use stylization in these ways. Despite being more stylized, there are some pretty high fidelity models in the game too, which shows that you can play with a level of stylization and make some things that are more stylized and some assets that are less stylized. The visual elements still have to work together, but the point is that something that was prevalent during the PS1 and PS2 era of video games was a wide variety of art styles and art direction across different games. Astro Bot absolutely makes a statement about how art direction in games is more important than fidelity, and I really hope that the big publishers and AAA studios take notice of this. The last reason why I think Astro Bot is the most important game of 2024 is because of the way that it handles nostalgia and legacy. We live in a time where so many of the games being released are remakes or remasters of old games. Don't get me wrong, I really like the majority of remakes and remasters that I've played, and I think that it's especially a good thing for games that couldn't have the original vision fully realized due to technical limitations of the time, as well as for games that have been stuck on outdated hardware. However, there have been plenty of scenarios where a studio brings back an old IP, not just in video games, but media in general, that people were happy with the conclusion of. Sometimes it is done with care and works really well, other times it doesn't work well and just comes off as a cheap nostalgia bait cash grab that tarnishes your memories of something you once loved. Nostalgia is something that you have to be extremely careful with. In this time of nostalgia pandering, Astro Bot is a perfect example of how to do nostalgia right and show respect to the legacy of things that came before it. The inclusion of the bots that look like various characters from PlayStation's history feel like they belong together, and I was always excited to see what cameo I'd run into next. Having them be bots that have the clothing and equipment of characters is how you can have a Bloodborne hunter next to Crash Bandicoot and not give it a second thought. The cameos are just that, cameos. They aren't the main part of the game, but it always feels like a treat to see which ones you'll find next. Whether they are characters from larger, longer-running franchises or from an obscure game that has never been re-released, each cameo has the same amount of love, care, and reverence put into it. The point of all this is that nostalgia is a tricky thing to work with, and Astro Bot shows that you can pay respect to the past and also build something new without over-relying on nostalgia. I think that in the current landscape of nostalgia pandering, that this is an important message to send. While Astro Bot may not be my personal game of the year, it is absolutely, without a doubt, one of my favorite games that I have played this year because of what it stands for and what it represents. Astro Bot hammered the Concord nail into the live service game coffin, has incredible game design that is reminiscent of PS1 and PS2 era games, is a AAA game made by Sony that prioritized art direction more than fidelity, and is a game that is simple, effective, and the most charming game that I've played since Medieval and Banjo-Kazooie. It's a game that made me feel like a kid again. A game that helped me remember some of the reasons why I love the medium of video games so much in the first place. And that is why Astro Bot is the most important game of 2024. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye-bye!